A Meeting for the Ages. Chapter 4. So, it was getting kind of creepy. I said, "My mind is in turmoil right now. I don't know how you're doing this. But you're right. I want Tadwell to live a long and miserable life. But Brenda is a different matter." I tried to explain. You can't just turn off your feelings for someone who has been such an important part of your life. My wife and I had an exceptional connection. It was a living thing. Now it's dead. I feel that. So my feelings of alienation are not a matter of ego or jealousy. It's a permanent psychological block. I've lost all faith in her. My gorgeous little star girl sympathetically added, "Yes, I can feel it." "Really? You feel the end of other people's hopes and dreams, do you?" I humbly said. My rational mind tells me that I should forgive and forget, but my heart won't let me do that. I would make up with Brenda in a heartbeat if everything happened by chance. But I know she met him more than once, so it was a planned and deliberate betrayal. Now I have a long and agonizing process of unraveling our lives. It helped me to say it out loud, even to a crazy person. It also reminded me that the supposed alien from the planet Coughlin Psi was sitting next to me in a shiny black suit. Big, gorgeous tits swaying and jiggling as we hit the occasional bump. I asked, hoping to get the truth out of her. "Honestly, isn't there anyone you can contact?" She replied pitifully. "Not within 6,000 or 7,000 light years, and they've probably already been eaten." She turned her sweet tear-stained face to me and said pitifully, "You are my only hope. I must put myself in your hands. Gorgeous. I just adopted a gorgeous stray kitten and at the same time got rid of a cheating wife. Why me? Worse yet, this woman looked like a Sports Illustrated cover girl. I was sure her presence would not go to waste in my divorce proceedings with Brenda. But what else could I do? I was planning my first steps as I pulled out onto I-25 and headed north. I knew I needed to find a place to stay, because I couldn't live with my soon-to-be ex-wife. So I decided I would drop off my star girlfriend first and head to the house myself. The Marriott Albuquerque was a 15-story monolith in close proximity to where I lived. It was overly grand and expensive for my taste. But I needed an anonymous place to park Stella, and nothing beats the anonymity of a big convention-style hotel. I'll go back and try to decide what to do with Stella once I've worked out the ground rules with Brenda and gathered a few necessities. I asked her to stay in the truck while I checked us in. She asked, "Why?" I didn't bother to explain that we might end up in the pages of the Albuquerque Journal if I walked her through the lobby. She was so spectacular, especially in her tight outfit. So I told her, "You never know, the authorities may be looking for aliens." An expression of absolute terror appeared on her face, and she said anxiously, "I shall wait. I saw what they did to the people on the ship that went down." Apparently she had a vision of being dissected like a lab rat. Check-in took a little while, because they had to look for a room with twin beds. I went out the back door and escorted Stella up the stairs to our room. The sight of her incredible, almost naked buns climbing 14 floors in a catsuit left me confused. When we entered the room, she wandered about as if she had never seen such luxury. I asked her, "Aren't there places like this on your planet?" I stopped trying to be rational with her. She replied, "No, my planet is the same size as yours, but we have a population 100 times larger. That's why we live like rodents in small rooms in huge towers, each with only the bare essentials." I thought she just described Manhattan, but I said, "Try to relax. It's going to take some time." I showed her how the TV worked. She acted like she'd never seen anything so ancient, but she was immediately fixated on the cosmetics commercials. I closed the door while she stared mesmerized at the TV and took the elevator down to the truck. The time was nearing midnight. It had been a long day, and tomorrow, after a good night's sleep, I would begin the agonizing process of discovering why Brenda had betrayed me. But I needed to finish my preliminary preparations. My wife was lying on the couch in the living room when I came in. She was dressed in her old tattered robe. She looked devastated and beautiful. My appearance woke her up. She stirred, turned her gorgeous bare legs to sit up, and shyly said, "Hi, you're home at last." I said softly and lovingly, "Because you can't just cancel 14 years of a happy marriage. Yes, I need to pick up some things and I want to make arrangements to talk tomorrow. I also wanted to make sure you were okay. She got up and ran to me. She laid her head on my chest, crying hard, and said, "Oh my God, Davy, I'm so sorry. I never expected this to happen. I'm such a fool." I hugged her and stroked her back while she cried. I said, perhaps too harshly, "Well, it happened. Now we both need to decide how to deal with the aftermath. We can start that process in the morning. But I'm so exhausted emotionally that I don't want to do anything but sleep right now." She leaned back in my arms, gave me a sizzling look, and said, "Let's go to bed. I want to start making it up to you." I gave her a weak smile and said, "That's not going to happen, Brenda. It's already going to be difficult enough without complicating things with this process. I just need to get a few of my things and I'll be out of here. We can talk later." The next 15 minutes were agonizing. My wife, the woman I had loved for almost a third of my life, followed me around, crying pitifully and begging me to stay while I gathered my clothes, toiletries, and laptop. Finally, I stopped, turned to her, and said angrily, "Look! What did you expect? Did you think I was going to accept you being with this jerk as payment for staying married to you?" I'd never spoken to her like that before. That was her first hint that there could be fatal consequences. She started whining, "It was only for a couple weeks. You weren't supposed to find out. I was so careful." This confirmed my suspicions. It was deliberate. My heart exploded like the Death Star. I said, maybe a little too ruthlessly, "You play, you pay, now we both lose. I need to get out of here, or I'm going to say something I'm going to regret." I closed my roller bag, grabbed my laptop, and walked out to the truck. Brenda followed me the whole way, wailing, "Don't go. Please don't go. I'll do anything." It was heartbreaking. I'm a nerd, so of course I had to analyze everything. First of all, it was obvious that Brenda didn't have a plan B. She expected to have a little fun and then return to life as my loving wife, and her husband would be none the wiser. Second, whatever her motives, she always knew she was doing wrong. And finally, her motives were more intricate than just helping Turd in his time of need. My wife was a nurturer, right down to the tips of her nails, covered in colored nail polish. It certainly explained her strange fascination with rehabilitating Dick Bright, too. And yet, it did not explain why she was doing this to him. Of course, Brenda had to believe that the situation was temporary. And since neither husband was hurt during the fulfillment of her fantasy, her actions were appropriate, at least in her own mind. I didn't like it, and I didn't sympathize with her. But I understood her. In the end, it was Richard Turd Tadwell who had to be held accountable. Turd probably saw it as part of a game he played throughout his protracted adolescence. Tough guys were getting hot chicks, so naturally, Turd wanted my wife. Of course, I blamed Brenda too, but it was Tudwell's scheming that had led her to the dark side. So I had no intention of sicking the hellhounds of the dark net on Brenda, as I had intended to do with Tudwell. Nevertheless, the marriage was consummated. History. And nothing but time travel could revive it. And then my thoughts returned to my little star girl. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning when I entered the house, trying to be as quiet as possible. To my complete surprise, instead of sleeping soundly, Stella was lying naked on the bed. I just stood there looking at her. She was a riot of colors. Her skin was the color of alabaster. The contrast with her black hair and huge green eyes was striking. Her nipples, which looked like little maraschino cherries, were perched on a plateau of huge tits that rose and bulged above her ribcage like the desert mesas surrounding Albuquerque. I knew Stella was outrageously graceful. Her costume left no doubt, but I hadn't realized how trim her body was, her firm muscular legs and real abs. She said softly, "I knew you'd need comforting after talking to your buddy." What was that fucking female compassion? First Brenda, now her. Are all women stupid? Then I felt her touch on my mind and she recoiled, jumping to her feet. Panting, she quickly threw on one of those fluffy white hotel robes. She looked terrible. The robe was 3 or 4 sizes too big for her, making her look like a 6-year-old. Her perfect face went from alabaster to fiery red. She gasped. "I'm so sorry. I've seen it. Life is different here. I had no idea," I said angrily. "Saw what?" Her little charade was starting to get annoying. Or maybe I was just fed up with other people, especially women. He said simply, "How inappropriate my actions were. You have a conflict. You don't want to break up with your girlfriend, but you don't understand how you can be with her." I looked stunned. Could she really be a mind reader? She added sympathetically. "In and of itself, she is not an obstacle. You know she only wants you. It is the lack of respect, the deliberate attempt to deceive you. That is what seems intransigent to you. You don't know how you will be able to maintain your dignity if you ignore the lack of respect she has shown you by entering into a secret relationship." Okay, I didn't know how she did it, but that was the problem. It was a matter of preserving my pride. Pride is the deadliest sin because it is directly related to who you are. Lust, greed, gluttony, sloth, envy, anger are direct transgressions. You can overcome them by suppressing desire. But pride is innate. Pride dictates how you perceive yourself and how you behave. If you have too much pride, you are a self-righteous asshole. If you have too little, you are a weakling. The problem is that the mindset required to maintain an acceptable balance has to be constantly adjusted with each new challenge. Otherwise, you'll sacrifice your self-respect. I could have done without Brenda if she had managed to convince me that she had learned her lesson. The real trauma was that she had knowingly conspired to share her intimate self with a guy I hated. The thrill of Tudwell's conquest of Brenda should have been more pleasurable than the moment itself. This violation demanded an adequate response, or I would lose all sense of my own worth and dignity. Seems to me the only acceptable response to willful betrayal would be to end the marriage. Of course, Brenda will have her excuses. On the surface, they may seem convincing. But what do you say to a person who decides to cheat and then lies about it? What could Brenda say to me that would convince me that she wouldn't do it again? It was a real existential dilemma. Sartre would have been pleased. Stella was clearly watching my thoughts as these feelings raced through my head. And yes, I was beginning to believe that she could do that. Her beautiful face reflected my emotions as I worked through the situation. She said eagerly, "I will be your companion. We are both alone now." That remained to be seen. But it was late, and I had a busy day ahead of me. I said, "Do you mind if we get some sleep now?" She nodded and said, "Our sleep cycles are not like yours, but I need to shut off my mind, and the darkness helps me do that." That was interesting. Was she really a robot? I turned off the light because I didn't want to think about it. Brenda met me at the door. She looked terrible. She said sadly, "Polly called me a fool last night. Apparently, she saw the video that Tood sent out to the world. I didn't see it since I'm not on his contact list." I looked skeptical. She embarrassedly replied, "He deleted me from his phone when we started dating. He said he wanted to avoid suspicion." I thought, what an idiot. Brenda said, "I've seen the clip and all the incriminating text messages. By the way, thank you for editing me out. I don't know how I could look my friends in the eye after witnessing these dirty deeds." She added sadly, "I don't know why Richard sent these things out, but he's ruined his life. Polly is divorcing him and the Air Force is starting an investigation. Adultery is a crime in the Army, you know that." Then she realized what else she was hinting at and added hastily, "I haven't spoken to Richard since my world ended. It was Polly who told me all this." I could have warned Brenda that Turd's current problems were just the tip of the iceberg. I had far more diabolical thoughts about how his life would turn out when I got to the dark web. But that would remain between me and Turd. My current goal was to find an acceptable way out of the marriage. As we had every morning for the past 14 years, we sat at the kitchen table and sipped a delicious French roast. I'm sure I looked as stunned as she did. Her eyes were puffy and red from crying. Her hair was disheveled, and she looked like she hadn't had a good night's sleep. People react differently to betrayal. Those who react more to stimuli lose control of themselves. They whine, scream, throw things, and commit self-destructive behaviors. This happens because they are frustrated by their inability to change the injustice of their circumstances. I suppose that's great, if that's who you are. Temper tantrums may even feel good in the moment, but they lead to self-destruction. You get nothing but more anger and frustration. Stuff happens. The key to preserving your personal pride is in how you react. Brenda and I both had a tough attitude. That was part of our attraction. We were practical people. We always managed to accept the things we couldn't change, and we had the wisdom to know the difference. We also understood that circumstances were what they were. Now we were determined to deal with them as civilized as we could. We had 14 good years. None of us wanted to overshadow those happy times. So there will be no melodrama here. Just two people who once loved each other dealing with an unimaginable tragedy in the most constructive way possible. She looked at me seriously, searching for some hope. I stared back with inevitability. Finally, she said pitifully, "It's over, isn't it?" I nodded. She continued, "I realized it as soon as I saw the video clip. I swear he meant nothing to me, and that makes my act even more incomprehensible." I continued to just stare at her, shocked. She sighed and said with an ironic chuckle, "It's for the best. I probably wouldn't respect you if you wanted to stay married." Brenda was a very tough and pragmatic woman. I said, "That's not the point. It was bad enough, but the deception was the deciding factor." Then I paused. I couldn't hold back any longer. I said with deep sadness, "Why did you conspire with that pathetic asshole to deceive me?" Her face turned white. She dropped her head on her delicious breasts and sobbed, the wings of her hair hiding her beautiful face. I waited. At last she pulled herself together, wiped her eyes, and said with strain in her voice, "When do you think I fell?" That question caught me off guard. I shrugged my shoulders and replied embarrassed, "What does it matter?" She replied, "Because it proves what a stupid woman I am." She stopped and gathered her thoughts. Then she said, "Up to the time we quarreled over Richard, I hadn't done anything that didn't pass the test of manhood. Perhaps he was giving me signs, but I was too stupid to see them. So I thought your concerns were misplaced and foolish. The next time he came over, I told Richard what you told me, and he assured me he wouldn't come by again. That's when it all happened. I thought the situation was resolved, and I was going to walk him to the door, but first I took our coffee cups to the sink. He came up behind me, grabbed me, and kissed me aggressively. I wasn't expecting that. I hesitated, confused and lost in that instant. She made a mischievous look and said, "He turned me into a crazy person. The worst part was that I experienced the best moment of my life, several times." Brenda saw my anguish and added softly, "It had nothing to do with the man. It was the situation, the fact that it was all very vulgar. I've always been a good girl, and now I was doing it with my neighbor on our kitchen floor, and I loved it." She added sadly, "Then there was accounting. I consider myself a moral person, and yet I was lying under Richard Tadwell. I knew he was forcing me, at first, but for most of the episode I was all work. How can you justify this?" Brenda gave me a grim smile and said, "My self-image couldn't accept the truth, because otherwise I was just a fool, and I wouldn't have gone willingly." I refrained from commenting, "Really? Are you asking me if I believed her? The answer is totally. Brenda loves this kind of thing. Once her motor starts, she can't shut it off. I think everyone in the neighborhood knew that. That's why she was considered so hot. A normal person would make a mental note and move on, but a sociopath like Turd would see Brenda's hot-headedness as an opportunity and certainly as his right. When Sir Edmund Hillary was asked why he climbed Mount Everest, he replied, because he had to. It was the same with Brenda. She was there. So Turd had to rise to the challenge, so to speak. Why did he do such a heinous act? Because he could. It was part and parcel of his need to prove, or perhaps it is more accurate to say, assure himself that he is as powerful and empowered as he believes himself to be. This is the hallmark of a true narcissist, someone who has no idea that other people have feelings. Brenda made a grimace and said, "Never underestimate the power of guilt in a good Catholic woman. My promiscuous behavior killed me, so I desperately needed a way to forgive myself." Dear viewers, in the fourth installment of our story, we delve deeper into the darkness of disappointment and betrayal. The revelations Dave hears from his wife Brenda rock the foundations of their marriage, leaving both of them in a deep emotional void. Stella, an enigmatic figure from the stars, brings elements to this story that transcend reality and make the viewer question the nature of the human psyche. Brenda, with her passionate revelation and honesty in the face of destruction, brings to the story the intrigue of a behind-the-scenes drama, that is made up of the duality of feelings and the struggle between her own morals and the desires of her heart. Dave, standing on the edge of the precipice of loss and longing, reveals to the audience the dark corners of the human soul where faith in love and devotion dies and resurgence of resentment and pain. Reflections on pride, honor, and self-esteem lead to the question, what is the price of true affection, and can it be forgiven solely by the presence of guilt? After Brenda's confession, we leave Chapter 4 obsessed with the prospect of impending separation. At the same time, Stella offers Dave unknowable solace with notes of mysticism and the mysteries of another world. Where will the road ahead lead them next? What will Dave decide to do with Brenda and Taddle? And what happens on the planet Kashi when potential fugitives with stories as beautiful as Stella's arrive from there? The answers to these questions and many more await us in the sequel to this story, where Dave must decide what to do with his marriage and how to meet unexpected turns of fate that come out of nowhere. For a deeper dive into the bowels of Dave and Brenda's experiences, we remind you that the full uncensored version of the chapter is available on our Patreon. Join us so you don't miss a single detail of this story filled with emotional twists and mysteries.